Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ready for Rome orientation webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Shelly Ruel, and I am the Community Manager at ItaliaPass. And I am joined today by my colleague Sofia Baragaglia, and she is an ItaliaPass Italy Experience Specialist. And we're going to share some information with you today about traveling here in Rome and a little bit also about some opportunities with ItaliaPass that could enhance your travels. As I mentioned in my email that you received, I've lived in Rome for over 20 years, so I'm really excited to share some tips with you today. Before we get started, I wanted to share very briefly what is ItaliaPass because you may not know. Probably most of you are here because you purchased a train ticket with Italia Rail. So ItaliaPass is part of that family of brands. There is a family of brands of the Italia brands, which include Italia Rail, tours, drive, and hotels. And they've been working with millions of tourists since 1987 who have traveled to Italy. And then our CEO decided that he wanted to find a way to help customers have the best trip to Italy ever. So he created ItaliaPass, and that's a membership benefits program. The base price is $149, and it brings over $500 in value for your Italian trip. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the benefits of the ItaliaPass today in case that's something that might interest you for enhancing your trip here to Italy. So let's look at what we're going to cover today. This is going to be about a half an hour presentation, and then at the end we'll have a live Q&A session. We're going to cover arrival at the Fiumicino Airport and how you get into the city. The airport's about a half an hour outside of the city center. We're going to go over the benefit of the ItaliaPass Lounge at Rome Termini Station. I'll talk a little bit about how to travel on public transport here in the city. Also a little bit about restaurants and how to avoid tourist traps. We'll also go over how you can get complimentary access to some museums and monuments, and also how you can get $100 off of an Italia Tours experience. I'll wrap up with a couple more of my favorite local tips, and then we'll dive into the live Q&A. That will last 15 minutes, but even if we don't get through all your questions in 15 minutes, you can still put a question in the Q&A chat box, and I will answer those offline. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass it over to Sofia, and she will talk to us about getting into the city from Fiumicino Airport.
Thank you, Shelly. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. Yeah, we can get started here. We'll start, of course, from your arrival. You've landed at FCO Airport. That's usually the case when coming from outside of Italy. Let's say you want to get into Rome or go somewhere else. You'll have a few options to reach the city. If you're trying to travel to another place such as Venice or Florence, most trains do travel out of Rome Termini, which is the main station in Rome. So let's see how to get there. So the first option you'll have is getting there by train, getting to Rome Termini by train. And in order to do so, there are two types of trains that you can take. The first one is called Leonardo Express. This is a direct train that goes to Termini Station. It costs $16 on Italia Rail, and it's the main express way of getting into the city by train. The second option is a regional train. I believe there's two types. The regional trains, and they get to smaller stations in Rome. They're the stations of Trastevere and Ostiense. So those are $10, I believe, on Italia Rail. They're considered regional trains, and depending on where you're trying to get to in the city, you might prefer these ones or the ones that go to the main station. We get a lot of questions usually about whether or not you should book your tickets in advance for your arrival. And I do recommend booking in advance, especially if you're traveling during high season. If you're trying to get to another city, especially, tickets do sell out fairly quickly. So I do recommend booking in advance, or even just to skip the lines. It's usually a good idea. However, the timing is really important. So I usually recommend booking a time that's at least 1 hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours after your landing, to book any trains out of Fiumicino Airport, so FCO, and definitely at least 3 hours before booking anything out of Termini. So again, if you're trying to get, let's say, to Naples, Florence, out of Termini, wait at least 3 hours, count at least 3 hours from your departure, just, to avoid any problems with customs, luggage, or anything of that kind. You also want to arrive at big stations like Termini about 20 to 25 minutes in advance, just to find your platform and have enough time to find your way through the station. Um, so yeah, that's it for trains. As you can see on the slide, there's also taxis. Taxis, they're fairly straightforward. They're usually outside the terminal. And from FCO, they usually have a fixed rate of 55 euros. So you can get it just from outside the airport, or some other options are a shuttle bus or a private transfer. The private transfer you can book with us directly. It will take you straight to your accommodation in Rome. Or again, if you're trying to travel somewhere else, you can go to Termini. But in general, you can decide your specific destination. They're bookable on the Italia Tours website, or if you would like to hear more about them, or have some of us book them for you, you can also reach out to support, and one of the specialists, such as myself, will help you figure that out. Now, moving on, should I rent a car? Okay, this is a question that comes up a lot. And there's no universal answer. However, there are a few tips that we can give you. And it usually depends on where you'll be going. So if you know that you're going to be exploring some remote areas of Italy, some classics are Tuscany or the Amalfi Coast, just anywhere that's not a major city like Florence, Milan, Rome, of course. In these cases, I would recommend renting a car, just because in more remote areas, getting around may be a bit more difficult. But if you're just, planning to go and visit the main cities once again, in this case, I would not necessarily recommend a car rental, just because the center of these cities, first and foremost, you have plenty of transport options, some of which you'll see later with Shelley. And secondly, traffic can get really, really difficult to deal with. There's a lot of rules, traffic rules that you would have to deal with. Parking becomes a problem. And again, it's not really needed. So again, depending on where you want to go, if you want to rent a car, if you decide to, go off the beaten path, you can do so on our platform, Italia Drive, and you would benefit as a member from a $10 discount after your booking. So that's pretty much it for car rentals. And another perk of being a member, an ItaliaPass member, is the access to the ItaliaPass Lounge. This lounge is located in Roma Termini, which is the station I mentioned before in Rome. And it's the perfect hangout spot if you have some free time before boarding a train, or if you just got to the station and you're waiting for your hotel check-in time. This is the Italia Pass place where you can relax, just sit down. We have free Wi-Fi, espresso, just refreshments. We also offer free luggage. So if you're looking for a place to store your bags, either carry-ons or larger bags are fine, as long as it's during opening hours and you let someone from our team know. We're ready to welcome you. There's also hosts from our team that you can meet there. So if you have any questions about Rome or your trips, they will be there and happy to help you. So yeah, I'll hand it over to Shelley now for some information on public transport within Rome.
Okay, thanks. So here in Rome, it's a very walkable city, but you may decide that you want to take a public transport at some point. Our public transport company is called ATAC, and we have three types of public transport in the city. We have buses. There's a metro, which is the subway. It's short for Metropolitana, so that's the underground. It's very easy to navigate because there's only two lines in Rome. There's the line A and line B. And what makes it even easier is that they only intersect at one point. So if you need to change from line A to line B, there's only one place you can change. And that is, which we've mentioned several times already, is Termini train station. So it's kind of a very central hub here in Rome is Termini. And there are also a couple of trams. You probably won't encounter those because they're not really in the downtown, the most central touristy areas. Tickets are relatively inexpensive compared to other large European cities. They cost €1.50, and they are time limited tickets. So you won't have to worry about anything like zones in the city or anything like that. They are good for 100 minutes from the first time that you validate the ticket. So when you board your first transport until 100 minutes is up, you have unlimited rides. There's only one exception to that rule. You get one subway ride within that 100 minutes. So what that means is anytime that you go into the subway on that ticket, once you exit the subway, that ticket is no longer valid for a subway trip. However, it's still good for as long as you have 100 minutes, as long as the 100-minute period is still valid. And you'll be able to check that because if you have a paper ticket, when you stick it in the machine to validate, it will stamp the time that you validated. So that's one way that you can tell how many minutes are left. Otherwise, you will use tap and go. This is a way that you can use contactless payment method for your ticket, so you don't have to have a paper ticket. The only thing here is that you will need to have one separate payment method, so either a card or a separate smartphone contactless payment method for every single rider. So basically, you can't use your same credit card for two people. And the reason for that is that the system counts that card as your ticket, and it can't record two tickets on one credit card. So if you have multiple riders, say you have your kids maybe going through, just give them like that you can tap the card and they walk through the turnstile in the metro and then use a different card for each person. Most of the buses nowadays also have tap and go. I haven't encountered any buses actually recently that don't have it. So you probably won't have any issues if you don't have a paper ticket. However, if you just want to be safe in case you do encounter a bus that doesn't have the more modern tap and go machines, you can carry some paper tickets with you. The ticket is called biglietto. So you can practice your Italian by asking for a biglietto. There's a couple places that you can buy them. So there's self-service machines in the subway stations. You will not find these machines at the bus stops, however. So you can buy the tickets in the metro stations, or if you're out within the city, you can buy them at a tabaqueria, which is a tobacconist shop. And that's easy to find because every tabaqueria above the door has a sign with just a simple T on it. So just look for that symbol with the T and you'll know that it's a tabaqueria, and you can ask for a biglietto or at a newsstand. There's lots of newsstands all throughout the city, and they also sell public transport tickets. A good idea is to buy two per person because that way you've got one for going and one for coming back. Last but not least, I wanted to point out a bus route to you, both for a good reason and also for a caution. So bus 64, the good reason is that it's very convenient because it runs from that main train station that we mentioned, Termini, all the way across the historic center over to the Vatican. So it's convenient for our visitors because it will take you to most of the main central places, or at least close enough. The only thing that makes it a little bit that I want to caution you about is because of the fact that it's such a popular route with tourists, it's also a magnet for pickpockets. Now, I don't say this to scare you. Rome is a very safe city. We don't really have violent crime here. The only real thing that you may encounter would be petty crime like pickpocketing. However, and knock on wood, but I have been here, like I said, over 20 years, and I have never been pickpocketed, thankfully. But I do believe that the reason for that is because I always look like I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm just not an easy target. And you don't have to be an easy target either, because it's really simple. All you have to do is make sure that you look like you're aware of your surroundings. So what that means is don't look distracted. Don't be look like, I know it's hard because you'll be like driving like this bus in the picture right in front of the Colosseum, but make sure that you look like, you know where your belongings are. If you have a purse, you can strap the strap across your body and have your hand on your purse. Men, with your wallets, instead of keeping them in your back pocket, put them like in an inside breast pocket or in your front pocket with your hand on them. And this is recommended in the super crowded areas. So like, for example, bus 64 is going to be crowded, start to get more crowded here as high season approaches. Also really crowded areas, like if you're in front of like Trevi Fountain or the Colosseum or places where tourists congregate, The reason for this is because pickpockets take advantage of crowded areas because people are jostling and bumping, and that makes it really easy for you not to detect if they're gonna get something out of your bag. And they're really skilled. But don't worry, you can avoid them by just paying attention to your surroundings, making sure that you know who's around you, keeping your eyes open, especially in Termini Station, because it's a very busy station. So that bus will be convenient for you if you want to get across the city center. Okay, now for some fun stuff. I want to talk to you a little bit about restaurants and how to avoid tourist traps. A couple of things about restaurants that you may not be aware of that I just want to let you know about. We do eat a little bit later here than in, say, the United States or Canada. We tend to eat lunch around 1 p.m. or 1:30, and dinner starts around 8 p.m. or 8:30. This doesn't mean you can't get a meal in a restaurant outside of those hours, but if you want to go to a local Rome restaurant, then likely they're not going to be serving meals before those times. Another thing I wanted to tell you about is the check. It's called il conto. Something that people have asked me about is, how come they're not bringing my check? And people are waiting for the check for the waiter to bring the check to the table. And actually, because that's like in the United States, for example, like they'll bring your food and oftentimes just put the check down and say, hey, I'll take that for you when you're ready, as a convenience, so that as soon as you're ready to go, you can pay and leave. Well, it's kind of the opposite here, because when we go out to dinner here, culturally, it's a moment for friends and family to visit. And so the wait staff doesn't want you to feel pressured that you have to leave that table. Generally speaking, once you have a table in a restaurant here, unless they tell you in advance that you have it for a set amount of time, generally speaking, you're going to have that table as long as you want. So what that means is, to respect your time together with your friends and family, they won't bring the check until you ask for it, because they don't want you to feel rushed. So it's very simple. When you're ready, just simply ask for the check and they'll bring it right away. It doesn't mean that they're like having bad service because they haven't brought it or that they've forgotten about you. It's actually the opposite. But that's a good tip to know, because otherwise you may not know that that's why it's not coming. And the last thing is here is tipping. People ask a lot about, do I need to leave a tip? So the simple answer is no, you don't. You're not expected to leave tips here in restaurants. I know that can feel a little odd, especially coming from the United States. But the fact is that the wait staff here makes a regular salary and they don't work for tips. So you're more than welcome to leave something if you feel like you got really good service. But I would never leave anything as it would be exorbitant here to leave 20%. Generally speaking, people might leave €1 per person if they want to like show a courtesy that they had good service. But just know that it's not expected. And I want you to know that in case you're in a place where they try to tell you or insinuate that you're expected to leave some sort of tip, because some places that might be more on the touristy side might try to take advantage. But you'll know that that's not the case. So you don't need to worry about that. Tipping also, people ask me about taxis. You don't need to tip in taxis either. It's courteous if you're paying with cash to round up to the next euro, just so that the driver doesn't have to make small change. But nowadays you can pay for your taxi rides with a card usually. And we also have Uber here in Rome. So you can use your regular Uber app on your phone. It will work here in Rome as well. Now let's go over to gelato. So the gelato that you see in this picture on the bottom right is the kind of gelato I want you to avoid. So overflowing tubs is a tip off that it's a touristy oriented type of gelato, because they whip a lot of extra air into it to make it look really impressive. But an authentic gelato would never really raise that much over the tubs. It will be pretty much level with the actual metal tins that it's in, the serving tubs. And another tip off to gelato that's not necessarily the most authentic is if you see these overly bright neon colors, which you will see downtown in these more touristy places. That means it's artificial coloring. So with fruit flavors, it may be a very pale color because they're actually using the actual fruit and not adding any coloring to it. So I hope that you enjoy the delicious gelato. Oh, one more tip for gelato. We start with 2 flavors here. You can get one flavor in your cone, but in the United States, usually it's not common to get like 2 scoops or 3 scoops of different flavors, whereas here it's super common. They're sold by the number, the cones are sold by the number of flavors you want. So the first size is usually 2 flavors, then you can go up to 3, even 4, and you can get it in a cone or a cup. Last but not least, a couple of tourist traps in restaurants. If you see pictures on the menu, that is a dead giveaway that it is a tourist-oriented restaurant. And that's because obviously Romans don't need to see pictures of what they're going to eat. They know what the dishes are. So you'll see that a lot downtown in the historic center where there's a lot of tourists. And something I call promoters, when there's somebody out in front of the restaurant that's trying to usher customers inside to eat there, obviously that's not a really local restaurant. That's more of a tourist restaurant because the local places don't need to usher customers in. Their customers are locals. They just know when they go there. Now, are you going to get a horrible meal at a place like this? No, probably not. It'll probably be passable. But in comparison to something really local and authentic, it's not going to be the authentic experience that a Roman would eat. So, for example, this dish that you see in the photo, that's carbonara, a real Roman carbonara is going to be different and more authentic in a local restaurant. So I would encourage you to seek those out. And usually they're not far from where these touristy places are. So you shouldn't have to go too far to find something more authentic. All right, now I'm going to pass it back over to Sophia to talk to us about how to get into the sites and some perks of this membership.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, so now for all the exciting sites that you'll get to see during your stay in Rome, let's start from our member benefits. Our Italia Pass members get one free tour of the Colosseum, featuring exclusive access to the arena floor through the iconic Gladiators Gate. So if you're in Rome, definitely make sure to take advantage of this free benefit. You can also get free access to the Pantheon in Rome, and something that's a bit more recent. If you're going to Florence, you'll also have access to the Uffizi and Accademia Gallery. So if you're in these two cities, do make sure to check this out. They're wonderful, all of them. So they're definitely a must-see. Other tours that we have in Rome, of course, include Vatican tours, as well as walking tours of the rest of Rome. So if you want to see Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, of course, and hear all about the history and traditions of these places, we do have tours that offer this. If you plan on staying in Rome for at least 2 days or more, we also have the Rome Tour Pass, which includes everything that I've just mentioned. And it's usually a pretty good bundle deal that you can look into if, again, it's usually something that takes 48 hours since it's a lot of tours and plenty of things to see. So if you have that amount of time, I definitely recommend looking into it. Then, of course, as a member, if you choose one of our tours, let's say a Vatican and Sistine Chapel tour, that's usually a member favorite in Rome. Know that our members do get $100 off of their first tour booking and 10% off of any subsequent tour order. So if you're looking at a specific tour, just keep that in mind. And if you have any questions, as I said before, feel free to reach out to support, and we'll be happy to help you. You can of course book these tours on italiatours.com as well. But something that you should know, just as an advance warning, these tours do fill out pretty quickly. So especially if you're traveling this summer, please make sure that you take at least a few weeks, or that you reach out a few weeks before to get your booking set, because there's just a lot of volume, a lot of people that will be there. So we want to make sure that you'll have enough space and time. And now for Italy Magazine. This that you see here is one of our special editions of the Italy Magazine. Of course, Italy Magazine is a power brand and a premium benefit as an Italia Pass member. It's our Everything Italy magazine. And this year you will get free access to this special edition, which is for the Jubilee. and it will just give you insider tips into visiting iconic landmarks around Rome ahead of this year's, well, Jubilee, and now in recent times, everything else that's going on around the Vatican. So the specific issue is focused, it's especially useful, I would say, for first-time visitors into the city. But even if you've been there before, it's a good refresher to anyone who's already visited the Vatican specifically, and you can get a few more tips uh, as an additional trip, let's say travel benefit. All you need to get access to this issue is you'll have to fill out a brief survey in the community, and that's where you'll find all the information. Last but not least, Rome's best kept secret, the Borgia Dungeon. This used to be known previously as the Borgia Gallery. It is now the Borgia Dungeon, and it is a very special place, one of our hidden gems, truly, because it is one of the only places in the city where you can access the original ancient Roman street level. Um, and it's an exclusive for Italia Pass members. So that's where usually we host most of our events. If we have any special event, if we have any special exhibition that's going on, that's where you'll find it. When you visit the gallery, you'll hear about the fascinating history of the Borgia family, which most of us have heard about one way or another. You'll take a unique look at the Renaissance, the Roman Renaissance specifically in general, and the context of this very powerful family. And of course, your visit will be paired with a wine tasting and aperitivo, which is a very a great way to explore the local food culture, and it's a very Italian experience to have overall. So you'll be there with our sommeliers, and again, this is only accessible to our members. It's our probably our most exclusive benefit, I would say. So if you're in Rome, definitely check it out. It is truly a one-of-a-kind experience, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's going. And now back to Shelley for some local tips.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with a couple of my favorite local tips for you. The first one, especially now that it's getting warmer, is you don't need to buy plastic water bottles as you go around the downtown or go around the city. We have thousands of these water fountains. They're called Nazzoni. Nazzoni is the plural form of Nazzone. It means big nose. And that's because it's like a play on the shape of the spigot on these water fountains. And the water comes out continuously, like you see in the photo. It's drawn from a deep underground spring. It comes out really cold, so it's perfect to refill your refillable water bottles as you're going around downtown. And at the end of this presentation, well, actually, I'm going to send an email. So you'll find a list of resources that I've mentioned in this presentation. You'll find that in your email inbox. No later than tomorrow, you'll have a recording of this presentation. And in that list of resources, I provide a link to a smartphone app from the local water utility, and it lists on a map. It has all the locations of the thousands of Nazzoni throughout the city. So it's a really convenient way to know when you're going to get your next water refill. Oh, and one super local tip is if you don't have a bottle or you just want to look super local and you want to drink directly from the water fountain, you can. The way to do that is you stick your thumb, you plug the water that's coming out of the bottom, and you can't see it in this photo, but there's a tiny hole on the top of the spigot. So the backflow, the pressure from when you plug the water spigot, it shoots water out of that little hole on the top, and it makes like a water drinking fountain. And so you can just bend down and drink directly from the fountain. You might see Romans doing that. My only caution is watch out for passersby because you might shoot someone with water if you're not careful. It's been known to happen. So that's a local tip. And then the other one I have for you is something that Sophia mentioned when she was talking about the Borgia Dungeon, and they have aperitivo time there. Anywhere in the city, you can get an aperitivo at like a bar, even coffee bars have them. This is a local pre-dinner tradition. The time of aperitivo is usually around 6:30. I guess it would be kind of like an Italian happy hour. Basically, you get a drink. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It can also be non-alcoholic. The one you see in the picture is the iconic aperitivo that you've probably heard of. It's called the Aperol Spritz. If there's alcohol in these aperitivo drinks, it's very low alcohol content because it's before dinner. So you can try this. This picture that I show here is from Meccanismo. It's in Trastevere. I give you the link to that in my references because it's a really nice place to get an aperitivo because you see how abundant the food is. So it's like a pre-dinner drink and snacks. If you go to like any coffee bar, you can also get an aperitivo. It'll probably be a more simple one. Sometimes it's just potato chips and peanuts. A really simple aperitivo that I like is just Prosecco. That's real easy to remember and pronounce. So just a glass of Prosecco, and then they'll give you some snacks along with that. So that's fun to do before dinner. And so that wraps up the information part of our presentation. Like I said, I'm going to send you an email with links to the resources. We're going to have a recap, a written recap of the Q&A that we're about to hold, and you will get a link to the recording. So if you joined late or you want to go back to a certain slide, I'll send you a link to this recording on YouTube. It's a recording, it's a link that's just for you if you registered. It's not open to the public. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, stop share, and then you can ask questions of us. At the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A chat function. So you just type your question in. We already have a few. Type it in at any time, and we're going to go through these live. We have 15 minutes, and don't worry if we don't get to all of your questions because these get saved for me. So if there's ones that we don't address live, I can go back later and answer them offline, and you'll get a link to those in the community. I'll post it in our ItaliaPass community. So the first question is, how is the weather in Rome during mid-late May? So it's warm. I would say it's already getting pretty warm, although I'm in long sleeves today. It's really weird weather lately. It's been a combination of chilly, rainy, warm, hot. But I would say generally in Fahrenheit, expect to see temperatures around 75, probably on average. In the evening, it might get chillier. You might want the best advice is to dress in layers. So bring light layers, bring like a cardigan or some shawl for women, just something to if you get a little chilly. But it's pleasant. It's really pleasant. It's not as hot as it's going to start to get in June, and July and August are really unbearable. So it's a nice time to visit mid to late May. I'll take this next one too, because this is about a local Rome thing and I have some resources. So the question is, how are the gluten-free food options in Rome? So gluten-free is much more common than it used to be. Like when I first moved here 20 years ago, it was pretty much unheard of. Nowadays, you'll find lots of gluten-free options in the supermarkets. And in terms of restaurants, a lot of restaurants will offer gluten-free options. I do have, though, a list of specific restaurants that are gluten-free specialty restaurants. So I'm going to include that in our reference list. So if you want to go to a specific gluten-free restaurant that has been approved by the Italian Association for Celiac, then I have those for you as well. But always, you can just ask if they have on the menu something that's gluten-free, and they'll be able to indicate that for you.
Okay, I think I can take the next one. The best way to get to the cruise port. I presume you're talking about Civitavecchia. That's usually the main destination for cruises and whatnot. I would say it's very similar to the ones that we have for FCO, really. You can get there by train from Termini. There's usually two types of trains that travel to Civitavecchia. It's regionals or high speed. In my experience and from what I've heard from other people, the regionals can get really busy. There's no assigned seats on them. So usually if you want to be 100% certain that you'll get to, board the specific departure and that you'll have room for luggage and a place to sit, we usually recommend the high-speed departures. Or much like with the airport transfers, we do offer private ground transfers. So usually it's in minivans. If you just want to be there at a specific time, the Rome to Civitavecchia line is usually fairly reliable. when it comes to trains. But, just in case, if you would prefer to have something more private and more comfortable, that is something that we offer. And the next one, should I exchange money? That's also something that comes up fairly often. Um, it's I think nowadays it depends. I usually recommend exchanging a bit of money before either before getting to Italy or once you're in Italy, just perhaps withdrawing from an official ATM, so to speak. That would be at a bank or a post office, usually most of the time. Um, but I think if I remember correctly, recently they've also been accepting a lot of international credit cards. So it's not, I think you can survive without exchanging money. It's just you might want to have some cash on hand just in case.
There's a
And
question here that says, do you have any specific Rome restaurant recommendations? I'll go ahead and put those in the reference list and not go into those here live, but you will see some Rome restaurant recommendations in the email link that I'm going to send.
perfect. The next one is also about, should it carry US cash or euros? US cash, I don't think most places don't take US cash. Of course, if, as I mentioned before, it's always handy to have some euros on hand. Are there places or markets that do not take cards? Yes. If you plan on going to small local markets or even just outside the main cities, that is something that you should keep in mind. Not most places inside the city, like big restaurants or establishments, will accept cards. Smaller places will not. So if you do plan on exploring a bit more, then definitely carry some cash. I will only have 15 minutes at Roma Termini between trains. Is that enough time? Usually that's the standard time for connections in Italy. In most connections that you get, even on Italia Rail, that's usually the standard time. It can be a bit tight, but it's doable. It's completely doable. Just make sure to follow the directions inside the station because it's just a big station, but it's very easy to navigate. Let's see, how much is the Italia Pass? Also, does the train run from Trieste to Venice? So the Italia Pass the standard Italia Pass membership is $149. You can also get it. You can get it on our Italia Pass website or through an Italia Rail purchase. The Italia Rail purchase is fairly handy because you get your train discount in one go. So it's usually a bit quicker to get if you're interested. We also have companion passes. Those are only available on the website. And I believe the companion is $95 as of now. As for the train, there is a train that runs from Trieste to Venice. I think, especially now, it's only regional trains that run, but there's many throughout the day. Perhaps there's even one or two high speeds, but they're not there's not as many as you can find, for example, between Rome and Naples. So, but there's many departures that you can take between the two cities, regardless.
Okay, there's a question about if we can share similar helpful details for planning a visit to Venice and Pisa. So interestingly enough, I was speaking to my boss this week about the idea of providing webinars for other areas, because we've been asked this question several different times for Florence, for Venice in particular. So that might be in the works. It's not at the exact moment, but the fact that you asked is one more cue to us that perhaps these webinars are useful for other cities. So yeah, so that is a possibility. And thank you for that question because it lets us know kind of what our customers are looking for. I'll take the next one too. Does Termini also mean metro? Is it the same place? Good question. So metro is the Italian shortened version for what the subway system is here. It means metropolitana. So metro, whenever you hear metro, that actually means subway or underground. Termini is the main train station, but it is also associated with the metro because there is a metro station at Termini, and it is the only place in Rome where both line A and line B intersect. So it's the only place you can cross from line A to line B and vice versa. So that's good, a question to distinguish those differences. What is the best, cheapest way to get euros? I think using your home ATM card, your home bank card, and drawing cash out directly from an official bank ATM here in the city. They're all over the place, so don't worry, you're not going to have trouble finding one. Just do make sure it's an actual Italian bank, because there's these little standalone ATM machines you'll find generally by a newsstand. They're called Euronet. Those are tourist oriented and they tend to charge high commission fees, high transaction fees. So just make sure you go to a bank ATM. Do you recommend the hop on, hop off and how to get tickets? This might be one. I know Sophia has said that you do recommend that. The tickets, I think, are they're right there in front of at the bus station, I believe. Is that
Yes,
correct? Yeah.
I believe
Okay.
you can get them in advance, but it's not necessarily most of the time. You can just get them on the spot. And it is, especially if you don't have a lot of time in Rome, it can be a good way of, just seeing the city.
This question just says the ItaliaPass membership with a question mark. So if you're looking for more information about the membership, you can go to italiapass.com and it will have all the information about how to join right there. Restaurant suggestions, I'm going to put those in the reference. Do a lot of the locals in Rome speak English? Enough. Yeah, I think that you'll encounter that, especially the locals who work in the tourist industry, right? So hospitality, hotels, restaurants will generally have enough English for you to be able to communicate. So don't worry about the language barrier. And when you're in person, you'll find that you can do quite a bit with hand gestures and body language. You'll find a way. It'll be fun.
Let's see, I can take this one. Day trip suggestions with cute shops and nice views. I mean, I think most small towns outside of Rome can qualify. Some very common ones. Of course, in that case, it's not necessarily a small town, but we have a lot of people that really want to see Pompeii and Ercolano, which I don't remember the name in English.
Hercule, I can't even say it. Herculaneum, I think.
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
That's usually a top rated day trip. Of course, it's a bit mainstream, but it's highly recommended. It's such a unique experience. Whereas if you want something a bit smaller or a bit more relaxed, something that we offer is a day trip to Orvieto from Rome. Very small, very medieval town, beautiful. We have a day pass for most of the attractions in the city. And it's a fairly hidden gem, actually. I don't hear it very often, but it's very, very beautiful and perfect for, a quiet escape for one day. Or Frascati, we have, vineyard, sorry, and, olive trail tours to Frascati, which is just outside Rome. So I would say those two, if you're looking for something a bit more relaxed, are perfect.
Okay, well, you guys have been amazing because you've asked a lot of questions and there's still 12 more questions to go, but we have to sign off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather all of your questions. I'm going to answer them offline and you're going to get an email with the link to our community. It will have a Q&A recap and I will answer each of your questions individually. If you don't see that email by end of day tomorrow, feel free to reach out, but you should be getting it by end of day tomorrow at the very latest. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful trip in Italy.
Thank you, everyone. Happy travels.